Welcome back to the next edition of Streamtime Sports. I'm your host, Nick Meacham, CEO here at Sports Pro, and thrilled to have my next guest on the show. And someone, not only someone, but a company in particular I've been following for a number of years across the sports media landscape. Someone that has been making a lot of impact behind the scenes and it's probably gone a little bit still under the radar, despite winning several awards, both on our respective awards and other ones in the market, ranging from best emerging in emerging tech, innovation, AI, and anti-piracy. So one of the companies, I suppose, that is really making a big difference to how people are approaching sports media. And that's why I was really thrilled to get them on to get into the weeds a little bit of how they're seeing some pretty significant changes, in particular around piracy, user-generated content, and probably, I guess, unofficial content, which is often one of these things that does fly off the radar of many organizations and companies and sports properties in this space. But that's probably enough of a setup. Welcome to the show, Eyal. Eyal, who is the CEO of Video Sites. Eyal, welcome. Whereabouts are you at the moment? I know you're often jet setting around the world in meetings and events and so forth. Where have we got you at the moment?
A lot of back and forth, but right now I'm at the office, planning to be at your event next week in New York. So all good, but good to be here.
Good stuff. Yeah, we were actually about to run into each other in person, but as is the frantic nature of events sometimes, it's often better to be able to have a bit more time in a more calm fashion to do these types of things online, but plenty to dig into. I want to talk a little bit about your journey, but and also a little bit what you guys are seeing, because as I said and tried to paint the picture before, you're across some pretty key areas of sports media that I still don't think people like myself and the industry is giving enough airtime to. But I think the reasons are because I haven't been able to get their heads around it well enough, because I haven't had enough intelligence around it. So before we get into that, and hopefully I've set the scene well, let's talk a bit about the genesis of Video Sites. How did it all come together? And talk us through the journey of where you've got to now, because it hasn't been a straight line in terms of, hey, here's the idea, and and we've got straight to that point. You guys have had all sorts of evolutions along the way. So just talk us through that, Eyal.
So yeah, thank you. I think VideoSite started almost 10 years ago with the development of a great technology. We sometimes call it, as half a joke, a Shazam for video. So we spent almost 6 years developing this video by video search engine that is able to track every piece of content across social media according to the content itself. So not by the hashtags, not by the text, but by video to video matching. And initially, we aimed it to anti-piracy. And that's actually where we started. We started working with big studios. We started working with the sports industry, especially around live streaming. And the whole idea was, instead of searching manually for copies and have a lot of people just to look for copies during the live event, let's have hundreds of machines running in the cloud. Each machine can go and run through endless amount of live streams and find your copies with this very unique intelligence that is both, I'd say, both fast and scalable, but also with a lot of video AI. Everybody has to say AI these days, but a lot of video AI that is immune to all types of manipulations of a video. Because piracy, on the piracy side, creators or pirates are becoming very creative in how to manipulate the content, so it will circumvent every defense mechanism, even the platform's mechanism. So we find everything the platforms are not able to find, and then helping our clients and taking down every illegal content for it. And we do thank Sportspro for all the awards during the years and for the recognition. This is where we started. Somewhere along the line, around 3 years ago, we realized that we knew it in advance, but we started doing the shift into what we call the positive side of copies. So while we are still providing very good, and while anti-piracy is still a big part of our business, and by the way, piracy on social media is growing with social media. So there's a lot of work to do there all the time. But at the same time, we also started looking at what we call the positive side of copies. So maybe just to explain what it means, like piracy is of course the bad side of copies. People streaming your event in real time. In most types of sports, this is considered piracy, and we are able to provide super fast response and takedowns. I'm talking about minutes from upload. We're able to take copies down at scale. So, but at the same time, the positive ones are usually fan created content, everything that a person would even sit in the audience and create a short Instagram and post it to his own page. No one would ever know about it. And what our engine was built to do, and we actually developed several additional AI layers for it, is to understand the context of the video. So we today are able to find everything that was posted around your event. Again, no hashtags, no, it doesn't have to say anything about it. But if the content is in the context of your game, concert, anything, it doesn't have to be sports even, commercial, anything around it, we are able to track it. And what we saw is that there's been a blind spot in the industry, meaning rights holders, brands, everybody were measuring the social numbers by their own channels. We call it the tip of the iceberg. While effectively below sea level, as we call it, your affiliates, meaning your media partners, your players, your partners, they all, even influencers, they post a lot of content. And on top of that, your fans are posting a lot of content. And I'm talking about 10x on what you were able to measure on your own channels. And you said it right in the beginning. Nobody really had access to this type of data. Nobody was able to measure it. So a lot of times we see people in the industry just overlooking it or just giving it a rough estimation, just throwing in a number that is a placeholder. But now you have the ability at the first layer to first of all see what's your real reach with your fans, with your partners. What is the full social footprint that you can create? And again, 10x is a real number. If you can show your fans that you have 3 times, 4 times, 10 times more exposure, first of all, your brand is much bigger. And NBA, as one of our biggest clients and also partners, also investors today, they were able to take advantage of it very early on. They identified it very early on. And we started working together. We showed them how their fans are engaging with the content. So many business units have seen the value within it. I would say even in terms of PR, the ability to say, hey, instead of having X amount of billion views in a season, I have 10 times that, then it's a big statement, especially for a big US league. So that's how we kind of started and evolved into the analytics domain.
So I think it's super, super interesting, that evolution and that insight that you're able to get now. Just curious from a business perspective, how does the rough split now? Because like they're both important parts of the business, I imagine, but are you seeing most of the opportunity as a business really focused around the new evolution of the company, or is the piracy part still a real core component of the business?
That's a very good question. And I think it's evolving. It's evolving for several reasons. One, we are discovering new utilizations to what we can do with this amazing new data. It's a goldmine for new services and new monetization streams for rights holders and brands that they just never had access to. So currently, I would say the split is 60-40 to the analytics part, 40% for anti-piracy. I think it's going to change, especially because of that ability to create new values for the rights holders. It's usually, we look at it as a comprehensive package, and a lot of it is coming from your policy. Some are more strict and some less, but there is always a part of any rights holders. They want to maintain their IP, especially on live streaming. But everything that is VOD, short forms, fan created content that is legitimate, they want to measure it, they want to monetize it, they want to show their partners, they want to find creators. We'll talk about that. But how do I leverage new partnerships, and how do I take the next step from the raw data to actionable insights.
So you talked about monetization and the value it can actually create once you unlock that. I think that's something I want to spend a little bit of time to get a bit more clarity on what that can bring. One of the things that jumps out to me when you say that is, well, looking at particularly from a commercial perspective, various sports properties have a strong commercial team, a sponsorship team, but they wouldn't have any visibility on the actual reach and numbers that are being generated, only what's being generated through their own channels, other than using third party sources who can provide estimates and insights through their own methodology. It sounds like what you guys are doing, and I might be putting words in your mouth, but you can help us get a clearer sense of that, is you're giving them that full visibility now of the true reach of whether it's a piece of content or a brand or a sports property. And I'm guessing that is where the conversation can change. Well, okay, partner, client, we've been telling you you've been getting this reach. Actually, it's 10x what that is. And that should be able to empower the commercial teams to be in, I guess, in a different position in the conversations that I might be having with clients on the value they're giving them versus, let's say, other traditional media channels like your, let's say, traditional advertising approaches, whether it be programmatic or YouTube, etc. You can say, well, this by working with us, we're delivering this reach for you that you can't get in any other way, not this scale, and particularly possibly from an ROI perspective. Is my theory right there? And is there anything further to it that I'm missing?
100%. You're definitely correct, and we have many case studies with clients. We're actually going to present one with LAFC next week, speaking exactly that. When you can show your partners and your sponsors, I'm giving you 10x on your exposure and effectively your media value on social, thanks to this new data I just never had access to. And by the way, we're not creating the data, we're just unlocking it. It was always there, you were just never able to show it. Now you can show your partners, hey, you're getting much more from me, you're getting a much better service or much better return on investment, as you said. And with this, you can, of course, in renewals, you have better positioning. The brands on their side actually see it, and we can talk about brands later on, but brands see it also as a better return for their investment and why they chose the right partner. But this is one, let's say, one basic pillar for the values that is coming out of our data. But there's a lot more. Other than showing your patch partner, hey, I got 10x exposure, and this is mostly for the partnerships teams in every rights holder. The next big thing for us is the ability to show the marketing team there are additional values. There are tools that you never had access to. So, for example, you have your original content that you're creating. What's the impact for it? What is the social footprint that you're actually having on your original content, branded content, anything you create, and how it resonates with your fans? But what we saw after we started just bringing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of videos and images posted around any team today is not only the data itself, it's a big data analytics, and there's so many insights coming out of it when you start looking at the data on the macro level. So I'll give you the example. Our tools surface what we call it super fans, but it's basically authentic fan creators that are creating great stuff around you. You just never knew anything about them. They could have 5,000 followers, they could have 50,000 followers. You never knew anything about them. They're growing pretty fast, and we have the ability to surface them very early on for you, and then starting collaborations. So collaborations could be with great monetization potential behind them. It could start from, let's get this guy to the venue, and so he can create content from the venue, give him a free ticket, and all of you already tap into all of their network. And then you can find creators or super fans in different regions and different locations that you want to penetrate. You can do things that are much more targeted to a specific audience by this ability of identifying your super fans. And there are hundreds. I'm not talking about the 2-3. There are hundreds that you can start prospecting through and find the ones that really speak your language or serve your purposes. and then you can start monetizing through merchandise and ticket sales, and boosting your content in so many ways that the options are basically endless.
So, looking at who you've worked with, you mentioned the MBA as an example of an investor and partner. And when I reflect on user generated content, go looking back nearly 10 years ago, there was a real, I guess, a turning point in the industry where there was the debate almost about, okay, the NFL and the Premier League, they are very hard on copyright infringement around those rights, social rights, social media content being broadcast and published, highlights in particular, non-live mainly I'm referring to here, not the live stuff. Whereas the NBA was much more liberal on that. They said, they said that we'll allow people to publish those rights and they will give us extra exposure. I'm just curious at what stage did you guys join that journey to help perhaps the NBA or others to unlock the value or understand better why it is a good approach to be a bit more relaxed around some of those rights? And just how is the scale of that user generated content that you're actually able to track? Like how much you talk about 10x, is that sort of the number we're talking, or is it actually much bigger than that? Because I can't get away from something. I get followed by the algorithms on sports, various sports properties quite heavily, and I can't get away from user generated content these days. Just what sort of scale are we talking?
Another good question. So yeah, we started working with the NBA quite early when they changed the policy and opened up. But I can tell you that in the last years, a lot of leagues followed, and we're happy to see a lot of leagues followed and open up user generated content to allow creators to create content that is up to 3 minutes, up to 5 minutes. NBA are allowing up to 10 minutes. So this is really allowing people to be very creative with their content. It also allows, by the way, the ability for leagues to enjoy YouTube monetization, meaning increase the monetization on YouTube with UGC, which is another thing that we help with. And it's, again, another monetization streams for rights holders. So it opens up a lot of opportunities rather than looking at everything as piracy. Some of our clients are actually doing some research, which could be, I'd say, transformational, about the ability to compare. There's been some kind of, I'd say, assumption that highlights are stealing eyeballs from broadcasters, and some of our clients are actually trying to measure it with our real-time data, and they're actually starting to prove that when you create the right short form during the event, you're actually driving people to open the TV, and it's actually helping the broadcasters. And I think we all want to see this analysis coming out and being public. This will be transformational, even in the way broadcasters see this evolving world. But we all see content going into short forms. We all see how the younger generations are consuming content, as you say, on UGC, on short forms, really, really very quick, very, very well summarized. And we see many, many different voices of creators doing their thing and becoming very successful. And what we are doing with this ability to detect them is to nurture them and actually help them grow with the support of the league. And I think NBA has been very forward thinking about it. By the way, NFL are also doing a very good work with this. We are fueling basically their creator program by helping them grow these young creators, and so they could be very big. And once those creators are growing and they have more subscribers, it's a win-win for everybody. They get more exposure, more subscribers. The league is getting more exposure and better partners to work with, and everybody's winning from this.
You mentioned a point quickly about the fact that the sports properties or leagues are able to drive further monetization through UGC. Just curious how that works. Is that a relationship through like a platform like YouTube itself to say, hey, this is our content, we should get a rev share out of that? Or is it they are doing partnerships perhaps with the creator themselves, which is like a sort of quasi joint venture, I suppose? How does that work?
So it's a mix of both, because basically once a fan is creating content and he's using the leagues, basically leagues content on YouTube, the league can claim and say that's my content and put a pre-roll on it, put an ad on it, and but I'm collecting the revenues. This way, it's not piracy. The fan can keep his content on. He's just getting a pre-roll on it, and then the league can collect. We help them with facilitating this in a very fast and efficient way. There are plans, and there are actually some models that the leagues are actually harnessing these the big creators and cutting them in some way into make even bigger monetization when it makes sense.
Yeah, of course. Interesting. So, what are some of the trends that you're seeing? You've alluded to a few there about around the user generated content or unofficial content. I guess I don't know how you would want to describe it because there's probably a few variations of both. Are there any specific trends that you think are any of them? Are they going? You said I think you said they're growing proportionately, or piracy was growing proportionally with social media grows. But on the unofficial side or the user generated side, is there some specific trends you're seeing across those sports properties?
Well, I think I cannot avoid mentioning the impact that TikTok had in the last couple of years on, especially around sports. The TikTok effect is something that we've shown to most of our clients how they can reach younger audience in a much better scale, and I'd say better investment in their production and efforts to post content online. Um, and they have seen growth of 3 4x on TikTok alone, just by how TikTok is driving content, how fans in TikTok are becoming much more active. So TikTok is one angle. We have seen I would say the proportion of, I mean, we track your own channels, we track all of your affiliates. And of course, if ESPN is posting something about you without mentioning you, it could have a massive impact, but you should see all of your partners as well. But we have seen the ratio of your own channels, your affiliate, and the UGC part. We've seen the UGC, by the way, we like to call it organic boosts. This is something we coined, but I would say fan created content is also fine. But we've seen this part growing to be significantly larger year over year. So there is more and more fan created content. But the one thing that you should be mindful of is that you as a rights holder, you have an impact on it. And part of what we do, maybe as an additional pillar or value that we bring to rights holders, is we give you the insights and I'd say the business intelligence to know how can I create content that will echo better across my fans and across UGC. So if I create a shorter form on Twitter, or if I create and if I post it right after the game or during the game, what would be the impact? It gives you a lot of, I'd say, A/B testing in some ways, but the ability to optimize my content creation as a rights holder to have the best amplification, let's call it, by my fans. It could be invest more in short forms. Do I want to invest more on long forms? Of course, it all kind of goes back to what do you want to achieve? Do you want to achieve more brand visibility? Do you want to achieve, let's say, more reach and engagement? But this is exactly the tool to give you constant week over week update of what's your engagement and how your content is performing. So you can constantly optimize. I think in one of the first times we came with the NBA on stage, they were able to show 2x growth from one all-star to the other just by constantly listening and optimizing their content creation. So 2x, I think back then it was from 800,000 views to 1.6 billion views on the all-star alone. Today they are more than 3 billion views, but just for reference, right? But they're growing with the fans. They are investing in creating the content in a better way, and it pays back, or it converts to better engagement eventually, better value for their partners, better work with their communities, and so that's how it goes.
It feels like, from what you've described, that there's almost a whole new, almost economy, whether it's the attention economy here to generate or to create out of this situation, right? Because historically, you follow broadcasters or sports properties, and they will occasionally share some reach and audience numbers publicly as to what a piece of content might have delivered. And some of that is visible just by going on to certain posts. But the idea of, I think the term you used was the echo effect, I think is a super fascinating approach, which I guess has historically been quite unmeasurable. Rather, it's got to be, hey, it looks viral. We've seen lots of it happening. There's one post that's done X. That's it. Now you can get a more empirical view from what it sounds like. So, are you guys able to? What platforms are you across from social? Is it all of them? Is there some that there are still some limitations on the platform? You've mentioned TikTok and YouTube as an example.
It's always growing. We currently track the 10 big social platforms, but we always look for new ones, especially now looking into the Chinese ones and others that are evolving. And we are seeing platforms like growing very quickly and kind of new platforms born every month. So, but we are constantly adding more and more platforms to our service. I think eventually we want to show the best value and best reach for our clients. Of course, the main ones today that are driving most engagement are classic ones of Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and so on. But or X, sorry. But as this grows, first of all, these platforms on their own, they create new formats all the time. So there's constant involvement there, and we are seeing shift between types of content being created, and even creators that are shifting from creating one type of content to creating another. And I love the term that you said, it's a whole new economy. It is. When we look at hundreds of thousands of videos and images created around one of our clients in a season, there is so much information within it. It's a goldmine of opportunities for collaborations, for monetization, for understanding what's in the content and how do I, let's say, the brand exposure, for example. There's so much you can do with it that we are, every couple of months, we have another idea for another product or another offering that we can expand to our clients. And it's amazing to see how this is kind of being adopted by our different customers.
So, look, you can tell that I'm on board. I think it's a great offering that you guys do. But one thing I know across the sports tech space is that quite often it can be a challenge to get to market, to get people to understand the product. Right? That I hear that consistently across the industry. Has that been a challenge to get people's heads around this? Because it isn't a replacement of an existing service or approach. It is a new approach, a new mindset, and then the knock-on effect of trying to get commercial partners to understand it, I think, would take some work as well. How are you finding, are there some challenges and hurdles you have to overcome when talking to sports properties?
Yeah, you nailed it. This is exactly the challenge we have. And sometimes we have to educate the market that, yes, this can be done. It was more in the beginning, but now people hear the NBA, NFL, and others are using it. But in the beginning, it was, wait, you can track what? You can track user-generated content? And then it took a while for people to start even, okay, you can track it. What can I do with it? It's a ton of data that you have to start processing. So we're trying to, with our dashboards, simplify things for you. We can show you the whole span of 100,000 videos you had throughout the season, but we can also show you the macro level. What are the things that you need to know in order to have simple action items for commercial monetization, super fans? How do I simplify the data and digest it for you before I hand it to you in a very nice and well-designed dashboard? So we've been working a lot on the visualization part, just to make it accessible to clients and to lower resistance to this endless amount of data. But you're correct. The ability to educate the market that, yes, this is now accessible. You never had it before, but okay, it's here now. And let's start using it to help you grow. This is, for example, CMOs, they never had a tool to measure the success of any campaign or any content that they're putting out. They can measure it. They can measure their own channels. All of a sudden, you can measure how fans echo it. Okay, what do I do with it now? It takes a minute. So it's a lot of presenting it. It's a lot of PR. It's a lot of noise that we're doing with it, but it's also a lot of time education. I can tell you, even with the NBA, we started 2 years ago with a single business unit working with the data. Today, we work with 6 different business units that take the data for their angle of the data for their own different needs. Because each one says, hey, I can use that for my purposes. Can you maybe transform it and present it to me in this way? Yes, we can. Let's give you this as well. So this is how we kind of show all digital are basically using it, and that of course is on top of the anti-piracy part of stopping everything that is live streaming your game or creating content that is, let's say, violating your policy.
So let's take a look back before we do wrap things up on the piracy side of things. I'd be curious to get your take on, how much ability do we have to tackle the piracy issue, not just by technology that you're using and have AR, but indeed that comes with all the bureaucratic or legal issues that come with takedowns of pirated platforms. Do you what's your overall take and feel on that space right now? Is it heading in the right direction, or is it just getting out of control?
Well, I can talk about social piracy because that's where we focus. Mm-hmm. In social piracy, I think we are very comfortable with what our technology can do in minimizing piracy. And we have some great case studies of how can we not only, I would say, I want to say diminish, but basically people are just losing the faith in the ability to find content on clients that we protect. And I'll give you the example. When you are looking, let me take a step back. The problem with social piracy is the ease of access. If you're a pirate and you want to stream the game that you see on your phone, with 2 clicks of a button, you go into, let's take Facebook, for example, you press go live and share screen. That's it. You're a pirate. You have very good hardware for live streaming, and anyone in the world can see the game in a very high quality. And that's how easy it is. And as the viewer, you just look for what type what you want to see. You'll see endless amount of options. Some of them are clickbaits, some of them are spam, but some of them are the real thing. And you'll just go one by one until you find what you want to see. But it's a split of a second. And for us, the ability to search at scale is the key for that. I mean, it's not only finding everything, it's finding it fast. And for us, one of the parameters that we show our clients, it's not only how many copies we found, it's how fast did we find it and how many people got to watch it in that time. So I'll give you the extreme example I'm using a lot. If you have one copy on, let's say, Facebook, one copy, I'm sorry, Facebook, I'm not trying to click on you, but if you have one copy on Facebook and it has 1 million views and it stayed throughout the game, it's very bad, even if it's one copy, but 1 million people got to watch it. If you have 1 million copies that stayed online for 1 minute, who cares? No matter how many people got to watch it. So speed of detection is key and stopping it before people get to watch it. So for us, speed is everything. So our average today is around 5 minutes end to end, from pirate uploading and to takedown. Even if you have 1,000 copies, we stop it. And you asked about, is it going out of control? What we have seen many, many times is if we stop you, you're a pirate, right? If we will stop you, you'll retry. But you're fighting a machine. You'll try, we stop you, try again, we stop you, try again. Eventually you'll break. And we see pirates break, and we see attempts for piracy going down, I'd say month over month for our clients. And that's for us the best sign. The best sign that we are actually driving something. And this is where conversion starts. Because you as a viewer, if you cannot find anything online, you would consider paying, let's say, the Zone, another great client of ours, you consider paying the Zone a few dollars to see the event. Now with the freemium and premium, you'll have the ability to go and see it in a much easier way. So this is exactly where conversion starts, from piracy to a paying client.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And when I've spoken to people in the industry, social media is one of the biggest problems because of the ease of access. Because social, you don't have to say it, but I will. That they're very hesitant, though they're very keen to do as little as possible, as required to help block piracy. They'll just do what they are required to do, and that is it, rather than take a super proactive approach. At least that's what I've heard. You may have heard differently. So you do need
No
companies like you
comment.
guys to try and actually stem the curve, because sometimes they're not actively trying to do too much. They're doing a little bit, but as little as they need to keep people happy. Now, conscious of sort of time, so wrapping up on the piracy point, just wanted to get. We talked about the user generated content. We talked about the fact that it's able to give people a view on the actual true reach and the echo and the scale of your sport on a much more accurate scale. On the piracy side, this might be a bit crazy or contrarian, but have you started to see any of the sports properties you work with or broadcasters you're working with through piracy start to really look at that reach of numbers, and particularly those that are ad funded models or part ad funded models, get some value out of that reach that pirates are creating? Or is that probably a step too far?
We've had discussions about it. On the live streaming, it's only discussions. On VOD, it's becoming a reality. So even opening up to much longer types of formats, if it's done right, if it's not just stripping the game in full, but if there's additional content that the creators, and this is maybe taking us back to the positive side of copies, adapting your policy to optimize to your needs, to your monetization. And every league has different needs because the content is different, and their goals probably are different. So adapting your policy, not just by throwing out a number, but maybe let's try to play with it. If I move my policy from 3 minutes to 5 minutes, what does it do to my brand exposure? Is it making my sales team get much better deals thanks to it? Maybe I need to reconsider my policy. But this is the adaptation you can do by trial and error, and in order to optimize it. And it takes me maybe even to the brand side of things. So if you're a brand that is, let's say, a sponsor of a league, if you can see that, several angles to it. One, if you can better evaluate your partners, thanks to this ability to see how their fans amplify your exposure, then you can make your selection of how do I choose the partners that are getting me the best return on investment, and not just by their own channels, but looking at the full picture, the full social footprint and the echo. By the way, it could be an athlete that I'm sponsoring, it could be a team, it could be even the league, but just the ability to measure this partnership. But brands create a lot of content on their own. So if you're creating a campaign, a Super Bowl ad, whatever you create, it has an echo effect. So the ability for the CMOs of the brand to be able to measure it, it has the same impact. Your own content is echoing on social media. You want to know about it, and you want to find the super fans of your brand, fans of your partners. Because if you can find a super fan in Japan that has 100,000 followers and you want to penetrate there, here you go. Collaborate with this guy, create the partnership. We can establish it for you, but create this partnership and grow your business kind of organically.
So the brand side is the final bit I wanted to touch on, and you've sort of set the scene really well there. So do you see that brands can really make what you guys are doing a real primary part of how they measure the actual value of a sponsorship and partnership with sports properties? Because one of the things is we have seen, I guess, a wider industry shift around how you measure success, and people quite often using very qualitative measures of success to justify that. But the more quantifiable we can make it, if the reach is as such, then the easier it is to sell it, right, ultimately. So do you think brands can really sort of lean into this a bit more closely? I think it sounds like from what I've experienced so far, that brands typically lean on very traditional ways of measuring reach, and then there's the qualitative layer on top. But do you think this adds another sort of, I guess, fills the gap, I suppose, in their approach?
100%. I think there are different types of brands, some more conservative than others. Some are much more looking at the new social digital ecosystem, and some are more traditional. But eventually, if you want to measure, I'd say every brand wants to measure, market, and sell. And that's exactly what we help you to do. Measure the full reach, measure your return, and then evaluate new partners to be able to market to a larger audience. And eventually you want to sell your product to a larger audience. You want to reach as many people as possible, and you want to do it in a much better way. So the ability to have a better A/B testing of your content and of your campaigns, again, seeing what echoes better with fans and how they respond to it, not only on your channel. I mean, most brands, fans don't go to the brand channel unless you are, I don't know, Nike probably. But even Nike would probably see much more engagement on user-generated content around it rather than on their own channels. But most brands, they will see the engagement happening outside of their network. And that's what we bring, and which is super powerful. It's different on linear. It's different on TV broadcasts where it's one measurement. Here, your content just distributes and kind of goes through the social ecosystem. People create mashups. People shoot their own unboxing, their Nike shoes, the new Nike shoes. So many types of content that you would never have access to and never have a real ability to measure. Was my campaign successful? Other than not only how successful, how can I make it better? And how can I evaluate new campaigns to reach more audience, to sell more products eventually?
So you're working with broadcasters, you're working with major sports properties, I think big and some challenger ones as well now. So you're working much more wider spectrum. You're now working into the brand space. Yeah, what's next here? Is it continuing to grow all these areas, or are there other areas you're also looking to expand into?
Another great question, actually. But yes, we are growing to brands. There's a lot of work to do there. We're growing within the different business units of our clients as well, because as I said, there are so many different sub products and sub values or new values that our clients are finding within the content. I would say we are not limited to sports. We are expanding to our brands, any type of content. We can look at TVs and studios. We already work with, I'd say, most of the biggest US studios today. But if you look at, I'll give the example of a TV show fan, Grey's Anatomy. If you find everything that fans are creating around that and the ripple effect on social media, that also have a lot of power. What's the reach of my trailer? What's the reach of my promo? How can I reach more new audiences that talk about in this case, my product? My product could be a TV show. So yes, we're expanding into everything that is media and entertainment and brands.
Well, that's quite a big piece of work to go through, AR. So I know you've been building over the last 10 years. It sounds like you guys got a lot of work, a lot of opportunity ahead of you, but a very exciting time, I think, to be in the space and area that you guys are working in. So well done with everything you've built so far. I've always been a big fan and look forward to seeing where you guys go next.
Nick, thank you so much for your time, and it's a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Al.
Before you go, myself and Nick would just like to thank you for tuning into this episode of Streamtime. If you found the episode insightful, please make sure you like and subscribe on whichever platform you listen to. As a growing podcast, we'd greatly appreciate your support in sharing or writing a review. Ultimately, we want this podcast to not only entertain you, but also hopefully help you navigate the digital sports landscape. If you have any feedback on previous episodes or any topics and speakers you'd like to hear from in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can find myself and Nick Meacham on LinkedIn or on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @SportsProChris1. Nick can be found @SportsProNick. Of course, if you want to stay fully up to date on the sports business news cycle, please make sure to visit the Sports Pro Media website or sign up to one of our several newsletters to make sure you don't miss anything. Once again, thank you, and we look forward to you joining us next week on the Streamtime Podcast.